When all's going well, believers have little sense of their need for God. But when calamity strikes, they'll tell a different story. When the economy fractures and your job is lost, finding the reason can be hard, if not impossible. When you lose your health or your child, something inside screams out, "Why?" But as Job of old found out, there is a supreme purpose for suffering. From the Moody Church in Chicago, this is Running to Win with Dr. Erwin Lutzer, whose clear teaching helps us make it across the finish line. Today, Dr. Lutzer continues his series, Probing the Why of Suffering. As Job asks God, "Why me?" we find today one clear reason.
At stake in any trial is always the worth of God. Always the worth of God. The fundamental question always is, how much is God worth to you? You say, well, where is that in the text? Look at this. I read it quickly, deliberately, so that you wouldn't think about it too much, so that we could think about it more carefully together now. You remember when Satan and God are having this dialogue, and the Lord says, you know, Satan, you have to realize that Job is a great man. He's blameless and upright, and he fears God, and he turns away from evil. You know what Satan says, in effect, is, well, who wouldn't? Look at, he says, hast thou not made a hedge about him on every side in his house? You've given him a wonderful family. You've blessed the work of his hands. His possessions have increased in the land. You know, you've been buying him off. You've been bribing him. You've been giving him so many blessings, and the more blessings you feed him, the more he worships you, and that only makes sense. But God, if you were to take from him those blessings that you have showered upon this man with all of his money and all of his servants and his fine family that everybody in town is admiring, if you were to take all that from him, then you would see that he would curse you to your face. Don't you understand that Job is in this because it is profitable to worship God? But let it become unprofitable, and he will curse you. And that's your temptation, and that is mine. Oh, how easy it is, how really easy it is to worship God when everything is going well. When you are healthy and well, and when the family is fine, and when circumstances are good, worship comes easily. But when God does things you think that a good God should not do, and when the difficulties of life begin to break in upon your soul, and when you begin to see the pain in your life or in the life of other people, and the things that you seemingly worked your life for all taken away, then the question is God still of value to you or not? His worth is always at stake in our trials. Number 3, events on earth must always be interpreted in light of events in heaven. Events on earth have always got to be interpreted in light of events in heaven. We need to try to see beyond the physical to the spiritual world. You know, we're going to be going through the book of Job, and we're going to be seeing some very interesting things as to what his friends are saying and the whole bit. But you know, it would have been so much easier for Job if he had only known the first chapter of his book. If he had only known that God and the devil had had this little dialogue, he'd have said to himself, you know, I'm going to remain true to God no matter what. If I'm important enough for the devil and God to talk about me, I'm going to hang in. But he didn't know that. The tragedy came out of the blue, without explanation, without context, without interpretation. It just simply happened, period. But you know, if we could remember that in the spirit world there is discussion about us. Some of you, bless you, who are going through excruciating trials, if you could just remember that maybe God and the devil are talking about you and saying, Have you considered my servant Mary, or my servant Ruth, or my servant John, or Peter, or Paul, or whatever your name might be? And there's a discussion going on as to whether or not you're going to go on believing God even when it seems as if He is no longer loving you and no longer blessing you. Have you ever thought of how much easier that would be to endure if you only knew it was happening? Well, I'm here to say to you today that maybe it is. Maybe it is. Dr. Louis Sperry Chafer used to say that a secret sin on earth is an open scandal in heaven. We commit a sin and it's secret and nobody knows it. And in heaven, it's big news because the devil is there saying, see, you redeemed him, God, but look at that. Look at how he's disobeying you. And Jesus Christ is standing there and saying, my precious blood was shed that this sinner be accepted and redeemed and that my righteousness be credited to his account despite his disobedience. And so you see, there are things that are going on in the spirit world which you and I, if we were privy to, it would really impact the way we live here, because the way we live here is really, really, really important. But we don't see that, so we think to ourselves, no big deal. All that happens is out of the blue, life falls in without explanation, without comment, without interpretation. It just happens, and from our standpoint, senselessly. When I was a student at a Christian high school in Canada, there was a young man there who trained to be a missionary pilot. He was flying in India. His first flight into a storm, plane crashes in a mountain, young woman left with 3 young children, and I have to tell you in all honesty, it makes absolutely no sense to me whatever. None. Isn't God interested in helping the missionaries fly in India so that they can get around more easily? Why all this training to be a pilot? Who creates the storm? You say, well, the storm was from the devil. Yeah, of course. Yeah, let's give the devil credit for the storm. But who says to Satan, here's something you can do?